the heels of the hottest PC case over the last going on 4 years now, Lian Li has done it yet again. And we tested it with the biggest and best cooling equipment we could to see how this thing would stand up. How did it fare? Well, let's find out, shall we? When Lian Li released the o11 Dynamic and the Dynamic XL, the game changed. With stylish looks, enough room to fit two RTX 3090s in it, XL only by the way. Don't believe me? You can check out our build, $10,000 worth, right here. The o11 Dynamic was truly innovative, and as I said before, it's a true game changer. We've built it in 100 different variants for the o11 Dynamic between the regular case, the XL, and the mini variants. And it looks great every single time. Always some of our most watched streams, even if it's like the 150th one. The only missing thing on the o11 line was airflow. Wait. Lian Li o11 Dynamic is not an airflow case, but it has like a bajillion fans. No, ladies and gentlemen, it isn't. It was meant to be a water cooler's dream, and that's why they partnered with the awesome DeBauer to design it. However, Lian Li released an o11 airflow version in 2018, but they were missing a smaller form factor case, as the o11 line of cases are rather on the larger side of the mid-tower. They released the o11 Mini in November of 2021, and that has brought us to this, the Lian Li o11 Air Mini. Yeah, we know, Robey. This is old news. I know you know, and I am so sorry it took so long to cover it. But we are here now and are way more entertaining than those other guys. So let's jump into the case now, shall we? Also, don't forget you can help us and potentially win some cold hard cash in the process. Just make sure you stay tuned until the end of the video on how. Now, Lian Li was gracious enough to send us an o11 Air Mini for review. Yes, it was a while ago. They actually do like us. So let's get started on the overview of the case. And let's see what it supports. Coming in at 16 inches in diameter, 11.5 inches wide, and 15 inches high, it's classified as a small tower. It's a little bigger than another small form factor case of mine, the NR200P from Cooler Master, but with full ATX support. Still, I wouldn't consider this a true SFF or small form factor build, but it's smaller than the o11 Dynamic for sure. Made with a 4mm aluminum panel, a 0.8mm mesh front panel, a 4mm tempered glass panel, this German engineered case is quality all the way around. I cannot emphasize this enough. This case feels premium and looks that way as well. I mean, just wait till you see the finished build. By the way, if you are liking this content, make sure you like and subscribe it for more on the latest cases, hardware from all the big manufacturers, and some super premium sweet builds in those cases as well. Now, back to our regularly scheduled program. The motherboard support in this case is quite a feat, as it supports eATX, up to 280mm wide, but still eATX. Sorry, that's crazy in a small form factor case. Ish. Also ATX, Micro ATX, and Mini ITX motherboards. So motherboards like your Asus ROG Strix X570 Crosshair 8 Extreme will fit in this case, and it has a modular back panel that adjusts for whatever motherboard you want to fit inside of it. Just make sure, like we always tell you, that you make sure that you have enough room for your components. Do your research and things will work out, or sometimes not, but maybe that's just me. Whoa. Seems to be happening a lot in the last couple weeks. Now for your PSU, you can still fit full ATX size PSUs up to 200mm in length, like the Corsair RM1000X. Just be mindful of your cables. In fact, we would recommend going with something like the EVGA Supernova 1000 G6, as it packs the same punch and is a whole lot smaller. Now on to fans and radiators, because there's quite a bit here, so we'll try our best to make it as easy as possible and entertaining. There are 4 modes in total here, so let's talk about them quickly. Like a transformer, or who remembers Mask? Let's say like Mask. There's a 5-slot mode fitting ITX and Micro ATX motherboards, and a 7-slot mode fitting all motherboards. The GPU vertical top mode mounts the GPU up off the bottom of the case, allowing more room on the bottom of the case. The GPU vertical bottom mode, which mounts the GPU closer to the bottom, leaving more room on the top of the case. All right, let's see what fits in one. In 5-slot mode, or GPU vertical bottom mode, at the top, you can fit 240mm by 280mm radiators, or 3 120mm, 2 140mm fans, with a max total thickness clearance of 65mm with either micro ATX or ITX motherboards. Okay, on the bottom in 5-slot mode only with a micro ATX motherboard, you can fit a 240mm radiator or two 120mm fans or two 140mm fans. Note that 280mm radiators are not supported on the bottom with the micro ATX motherboards. For ITX motherboards, on the bottom you can fit 240mm or 280mm radiators or two 120s or two 140mm fans. For the bottom of GPU vertical bottom mode, you have a max thickness of 20mm, so slim fans if you want any fans to fit down there at all. Now on the side, in either 5-slot or GPU vertical bottom mode, you can fit a 240mm radiator or 2x120mm fans with a max thickness of 59mm. Finally, in the front, using 5-slot or GPU vertical bottom mode, you can fit 240mm or 280mm radiator or two 120mm or two 140mm fans. Directly from Lian Li's spec page, they also state the following. When you have two 240mm radiators installed on the top and the bottom, the max thickness of the front radiator is 40mm. With two 280mm radiators are installed on the top and the bottom, there is no room for installing a front radiator whatsoever. Does it make any sense? Again, honestly, don't worry. We have a link down to Lian Li's specs page below if you really want to dig into it. Now when it masks to 7-slot or GPU vertical top mode, things are pretty similar as well. At the top, you can fit three 120mm fans or two 140mm fans with a max total thickness clearance of 25mm in both modes. On the bottom, in both 7-slot or GPU vertical top mode with an ATX motherboard, you can fit a 240mm radiator, two 120mm fans or two 140mm fans with a max total thickness of 20mm in 7-slot mode or 60mm in GPU vertical top mode. I know all these modes and stuff can be a little confusing, but I know that we're showing you a lot of imagery that is hopefully making this make a little bit more sense. Note that 280mm radiators are not supported here with an ATX motherboard. For ITX and micro ATX motherboards, at the bottom you can fit a 240mm or a 280mm radiator or two 120s or two 140mm fans. A max total thickness for GPU vertical top mode here is 60mm. Now both modes for the side, you can fit a 240mm radiator, two 120mm fans with a max total thickness of 59mm. And finally, in both nodes you can fit 240mm, 280mm or two 120mm or two 140mm fans up front. Same note applies here in 7-slot mode as it does in 5-slot mode. When the two 240mm radiators installed in the top and the bottom, the max thickness of the front radiator can be 40mm. When two 280mm radiators are installed on the top and the bottom, there is absolutely no room for installing the front radiator. Another note here from Lian Li in 7-slot mode that says when mounting a front 240 or 280mm radiator, please install the inner side of the fan bracket. Phew. Now hopefully that all made sense. I'm sorry if it didn't. We tried to make it easy, but that's the thing that's super awesome about this case is how many options you have when doing your build. One thing to note about this case is that you do need to do some planning to make sure you set up this case exactly for what your build needs. Now, some additional good news. You can buy the vertical GPU mounts on Amazon for both the PCIe Gen 4 and PCIe Gen 3. You can check for those links down in the description below. But after all that, I definitely need a drink going through all those fans and radiator configurations. Like a nice stiff yoo-hoo while I'm watching Mask. Does anybody even remember Mask? But wait, Robey, it's an airflow case. You forgot to talk about CPU cooling for air coolers. Can I just put an air cooler on there? Well, of course you can. It's an airflow case, and it will house CPU air coolers up to 170mm in height. So air coolers like the Cooler Master Master Air MA620M or the Noctua NH-D15 dual tower cooler both check in at 165mm and therefore both fit. Now let's move on to everybody's favorite thing. What kind of GPU can you fit inside of this case? Well, the Lian Li o11 Air Mini allows GPUs up to 362mm in length, so cards like your Asus RG Strix 3080 Ti will fit in here with no problem. Just be mindful of the radiator and fan placement and always measure it out before you install everything and find out if something doesn't fit. You can even do this again. All of the specifications and stuff are in spec pages. Lord knows I've done this a time or two, but don't be me, be you. And be the best you can be. Now you won't have to worry about your storage and drive support, as this case has room for 6, that's right, 6 2.5-inch SSDs, or 2 2.5-inch SSDs, or 4 3.5-inch HDDs. Just remember, the more SSDs and HDDs you start putting in this, the more cables you have to manage. And in small cases like this, it might just be better to buy bigger NVMe drives, as most micro ATXs and other motherboards have 2 or more slots on them. Some ITX boards even have 2 slots, like the B550 Phantom Gaming from ASRock or the Asus ROG Strix line. It has one on the front and one on the back, and some of them even have it stacked, which is actually pretty cool. And there you have it, all of the features and then some. Modularity is cool and all, and we are glad that Lian Li has done it. But the number of options in this case can be overwhelming for the first-time builder. But that's also what makes Lian Li, and specifically this case, great. If you are ever in doubt and you need some help with your build, pop on over to our Discord server over at discord.gg/Robeytech and ask about it. We would love to help you. Between our techs and our phenomenal community, we are sure to help you with what you need, without someone trying to tear you down and make you feel bad. We promote a family-friendly environment and everyone is welcome. But if something ever happens, just blame it on Tom like I do. Now that we've got that out of the way, let's get a build done in this and test it out and go over the thermals in the case and see how it actually performs. Starting at the heart of this thing, we're gonna use the Core i7 12700K, one of the biggest air coolers you can buy, and that is the Noctua NH-D15. We got all the Noctua fans that we could to fill this thing all the way up. The ROG Strix Z490G, so we're gonna be using a standard PSU, and this is the 850G6. This is the 12 gig version of the Asus ROG Strix RTX 3080 is a brand new card that just released. For our RAM, we're using Vengeance DDR5. This is 32 gigs at 5600 megahertz. And then we've got 2 WD Blacks. We've got an SN750, 500 gig for our OS drive. And then we've got a 1 terabyte SN850 for our game drive. This is an LED strip that we will make white, so we can just highlight. It'll be at the top part of the build, just to make sure that we can show the inside of the case a little bit better. This is a Z490G, not a Z690G. Are you kidding me? There it is, guys, Z690G. Let's start putting our motherboard together. We got all our parts right here. This is the right motherboard. It would have really sucked trying to put a 12th gen inside of the other motherboard. There it is, right there. Unlock this. There we are. Whoa, that was a good pop. Now let's go ahead and put a RAM in. DDR5 clicks coming up, guys. Oh my gosh! Okay, so we're gonna do our SN750 at the top. Get that clicked in, and then we're gonna take our SN850, put that at the bottom. There we go. We're gonna put the biggest flippin' thing ever.
Robey Rage.
We got the box, and then another box. Okay, here we go. Here's our tower. It's like glasses.
It's like glasses. It's like glasses.
Look at that. Lots of cooling. There's our motherboard ready to go into our case. Ooh, that's nice. Pops right off, just slides right off. There we go. And there's our rear, no dust filters. It's all like there's no dust filters. It's actually kind of cool. There is all the fans out. Ooh, maybe. Ooh, you know what? I might have to move the fan. I don't know if the fan's gonna fit. Oh, it does fit. We've got our 3080 12 gig. This is the new one from Asus. Let's just see if this fits. Okay, we are going to switch GPUs. If that didn't have that little lip, it would fit just fine. It's just a little thick. Okay, so we're gonna switch this to a 3080 Ti. Okay, so we got that done. Let's Let's go ahead and start putting our fans back in now. There is your build. All of those fans. That's crazy. Okay, let's start getting all our front panel connectors hooked up, all that sort of stuff. Tools are out of the way. Let's grab our GPU. See, that fills it out like nicely. We're gonna switch PSUs. So we're gonna go to 1000 G6 and up from an 850 G6. That is a very nice looking build. Now this RGB is just going to be a white light when it's all done, just to bring some white light down from the bottom. And turning it off. Okay, here we go. It's on. Ooh. So, here's the deal. The Lian Li o11 Mini Air is actually very easy to build in, if, and this is a big if, you plan your build accordingly. With great power comes great responsibility. What does that have anything to do with this build? Well, nothing at all, but it is really good life advice. But seriously, this case allows for so many options that just making sure it is set up correctly for the build you put into it is the key to ultimate success. I mean, even this week when we were doing an o11 Mini Air, in our haste we forgot to add the extension plate for the micro ATX motherboard, which slowed things down considerably and had us removing half of our build. I know people say documentation is for wussies, but in the case of the o11 Mini, planning and ensuring your case is set up for you is going to save you a ton of time. One key thing is that, for instance, the build comes in 7-slot mode by default, and if you're using a micro ATX, that would work fine, but if you keep it in that mode, you will not be able to fit an AIO or radiator on the top because you just won't be able to clear the VRM. For that, you would need to transform over to 5-slot mode, and then you would be able to have the ideal setup for an AIO-cooled micro ATX build. Barring this little bit of overhead, which I would gladly pay given the sheer amount of options this hybrid system provides, the rest is straightforward. There is a lot of room for cable management. Having done literally hundreds of builds in this case, it's so easy to make this PC look good, and with everything removable, you would be surprised how many options you have. So build experience is good, as long as you plan. But what about thermals, Robey? Does the case deserve the name Air? So we went about as hardcore as you can with air cooling without being too crazy. So we took a 12th gen Intel 12700K and we cooled it with the super beefy Noctua NH-D15. Oh, and finally, we used 8, that's 4x140 and 4x120mm Noctua AF fans to ensure that the case had no excuse. Okay, well for CPU on the 12th gen Intel 12700K, cooled by the Noctua NH-D15 at idle in the open case, we were chilling at a nice and very cool 28 degrees in the open case and only a slightly warmer, if you call 29 degrees warm, in the closed case scenario. However, when we cranked it up and really pushed this puppy, we saw things pop up to a, wait for it, 74 in the open case and only a slightly warmer 77 in the closed case scenario. As far as audio, which we do, it's worth mentioning, right? Because you know we're using Noctua fans and we got a ton of fans in here. We found out that honestly, even with the standard curve, which we use for our runs and our tests, which is 100%, I will say that we did not even notice much louder an experience than we did on any other cases we have tested, which is also pretty dang awesome. Plus 77 degrees, and load on a 12700K air-cooled? What? Okay, so for GPU, it was actually a similar story. At idle, we saw temps at 30 degrees in the open case on idle and a slightly warmer 31 in the closed case, which honestly is pretty crazy that our CPU is lower than our GPU, which usually it's the reverse in many cases, especially when we start getting things crazy, because we saw things pop up to 80 on our RTX 3080 Ti in the open case scenario and an only slightly warmer 82 in the closed case, which even then, we usually see GPU the other way, and in this case, we have a very cool CPU. Man, I'm wondering if we could actually air cool a 12900K. So to be honest, when we really think about it, this is much cooler than any standard o11 for sure, and something that's not even possible with an air cooler in a standard o11, let's just be honest. So the build experience is great if you plan, and the air actually does belong in the o11 Mini Air. Final question, how did the 12700K and the 3080 Ti perform in games, Robey? Well, I am so glad you asked. First up, single player NVIDIA tuned experiences with Intel 12th Gen Core i7 12700K and an EVGA RTX 3080 Ti for the Win 3 for Tomb Raider running at 1440p with DLSS on. At the highest preset, we saw an average frame rate of 231 frames per second across the runs we did on the game. Yeah, I mean, dang, that's high, and only 1 frame higher than our 3080 12 gig, by the way. Now for Metro Exodus, also running at 1440p, running with ray tracing on high and DLSS set to ultra performant, we saw an average frame rate across our runs of 106.42. Now that is a significant jump from the 3080 12 gig, not that you were asking, but worth noting. Well, what about AMD single player experiences? We can't be all NVIDIA, we gotta be fair. Okay, well first up, let's talk about Dirt 5, running at 1440p with ultra high graphic settings. We saw an average frame rate of 154. That's like 120 FPS plus, more than double what you need for racing games. Lastly, in rounding out our single player experiences was Borderlands 3, running at the highest graphical preset. We saw an FPS average of 123.22. Now, an interesting thing here is that our Q58, which is a 5600X paired with an RTX 3080, we saw 130 frames per second, and we can definitely see that AMD optimization here does help even when we're bumping it all the way up to a 3080 Ti. Okay, so definitely some magic here between the 5000 series and pairing that with even an NVIDIA GPU. Okay, so what about MP games, Robey? Well, for Apex Legends, running on low visual settings at 1440p, again, we're optimizing for competitive gameplay and the highest possible frames per second. We saw an average frame rate of 278.2 FPS across our multiple game sessions. Zero issues here and pretty much good for any high refresh rate monitor that isn't 360 Hz. For Call of Duty Warzone, again on low visual settings at 1440p, optimizing for competitive FPS and maximizing for frame rate, we saw an average frame per second of 216.7. Seeing a trend here that is indeed, this is a beast of a card and paired with an awesome CPU. Finally, for Fortnite, again at 1440p on low visual settings, set for competitive, you are sitting at a still very fluid and very high 468.9 frames per second, which, well, is almost 500. So yeah, that seems fine. Okay, so there you go. Robey, wrap it all up. Lian Li has taken special care with this case, and we continue to see just that with each new iteration of the o11 that continues to release. It's cool to see how much refinement can be done to a case and how much Lian Li continues to listen to the feedback of the people building in the case to make each iteration better. The o11 Mini Air is no exception, as this case was designed with airflow in mind, and when I built an airflow focused build in this case, it did extremely well. To be clear, there are other airflow cases, and even better airflow cases. But the Lian Li o11s have a visual aesthetic that people really enjoy, and very few cases have the performance and aesthetics dialed in like the Lian Li o11 does. And it's nice to now have a more functional airflow version with the o11 Mini Air. With some solid pre-planning, you can have a great build experience paired with a great looking build, and what's best, a great performing build, both aesthetically and thermally. We really pushed this case by trying to air cool one of the warmest CPUs out there, and the case allowed the air cooler to manage its job effectively. So yeah, I can completely recommend this case for both air cooling or water cooling, and it's nice to have an option in the stable of ever-growing o11 dynamic cases coming from Lian Li. But what do you think about this case after this video? Tell us, and maybe even win a little cash in the process. First and foremost, you need to leave a quality comment down below along with liking and subscribing to the channel. When I say quality comment, it doesn't need to be positive, it just needs to be something you liked or didn't like about the video. What surprised you, etc. about the build or the video specifically. Just not a I deserve to win, can I has a free PC, or something similarly lame. You also need to ensure that you have a way for us to reach you via your YouTube profile, so an email address. We will be giving away $25 to one lucky comment below. That is worldwide as long as you can accept PayPal or Venmo, and it's usually announced within 2 weeks of the release of the video date. Questions we'd love to get answers to. Did you like the case? Did you like the video? And was this review helpful? Were you surprised at what we were able to do with an air-cooled 12700K? And what were your thoughts on the Lian Li o11 Mini Air? We'd love to know all of that down in the comments below. Now, while you're down there, make sure you slap that subscribe button, whip that like button, and ring that notification bell so you get a notification each and every time we post a new video right here on Robeytech. Did you know that we have a live stream channel for special builds and events? Check out Robeytech Live down in the description below so you can like and subscribe there to know when we go live over on that channel. Have questions about this case or any other tech-related questions? Then check out our amazing Discord server filled with other tech and PC enthusiasts that love to share their thoughts and ideas on these very subjects. Are you looking for cheap tech? Then check out @robeytechdeals.com or @robeytechdeals on Twitter. We have our guy Tom scouring the internet for the best deals on all things tech and PC components. Finally, you can also follow me and my team on all the other socials @Robeytech everywhere. We hope you absolutely enjoy this video and we look forward to seeing you on the next one.